Hey, it's Sam, and I'm making this video today on overcoming difficulty and the four main malefic energies, difficult energies in Vedic astrology. Mars, which is the strength and will. Saturn, which brings time and pressure. Rahu brings future anxiety. And Ketu brings past anxiety. And all of them are things that are difficult for us to contend with in life. It doesn't mean they're bad. It means they're things that present challenges. They're difficult. It's hard for us to assert our positive strength and will. We don't have a lot of strength and will, so we wind up being frustrated, mostly at other people, and we wind up, again, getting angry and misdirecting our will and getting into power struggles with others based on Mars. With Saturn, time and pressure create fear and worry, and rather than navigate that with intelligence and wisdom, we withdraw, withhold, we punish others, try to control situations rather than ourselves. Rahu brings this future anxiety where we've incarnated in order to try to conquer new territory in this lifetime, and we're kind of stressed and worried that we're not going to do it, that we're not going to get it done. And Ketu creates this past anxiety, things that we feel like we've been there and done that. So I know all about this, I got it all figured out, so why am I still really frustrated, right? So again, these are very important energies, and I'm actually also doing readings now where I am doing these 30-minute overcoming difficulty assessments where I analyze these things in your chart. The overcoming difficulty reading includes your Saturn, your Mars nature, your nodal axis, also things like difficult house rulers in your chart. Every chart has some pockets of just difficulty where things can pile up, and then the current cycle that you're in and the current nature of what you're dealing with in general. So if you're interested in that, you can also get that overcomingdifficultyreading.com. But today I'm going to just go over these difficult energies so you understand them. First, we'll talk about the superpower. With Mars, the superpower is strength and will. And that's the strength to put into practice those things you know are right. Not just know that they're right. Oh, I know I should get up early and eat the right food and hold good boundaries and not slide on my principles. But, okay, you know it, but do you have the strength to do it? Everybody knows what they should be doing, but how many of us do it? This is why it's hard, because it means that we're willing to suffer for our principles, but that means that we develop discipline and courage. That's the superpower of Mars. He brings discipline to actually do the thing in the moment that's hard, not that makes us feel good, but that's hard, and give us the courage to move forward and not just sit there helplessly. So again, he shows that courage to say, okay, there's a battle ahead and I'm willing to do it. Mostly the battle with ourself and our own weakness. I'm willing to admit that I'm wrong, that I need to get stronger. And he also gives that clarity and distinction. This is right, this is wrong. I have the courage to do the thing that's right. And that's the only function of right and wrong. Right and wrong should be principles that we put into practice, not judgments that we bring especially to bear against other people. This is the downfall of Mars energy, when it's like, yes, this is right, this is wrong, and you're the one who's wrong. Not I'm wrong for not being able to put it into practice, you're wrong for saying it or whatever. So again, clarity and distinction to put into practice what we know is right. And Mars wants to resolve these matters. When he's powerful, we actually resolve these matters. We don't just hang out in this confusing space where we want to keep inviting the same dysfunctional energy and then fighting over it over and over again. When people have a powerful Mars, they want to resolve things. Let's resolve it and move forward. Not let's stay in the same dysfunctional, let's say, interaction and keep fighting about it forever and ever. Let's resolve it. Let's either get this thing fixed and move past it or something. And again, that's where a powerful Mars allows us to resolve this thing and then have the courage to, surmount the obstacle. And in one sense, he's very good at defending those boundaries, especially relative to our desires, where we tend to slide on our principles and slide on our boundaries. Mars says, no, this is a sort of no compromise zone, and I know that I can't go any further than this. When we're able to do that, then we don't allow ourselves to slide on our principles and then get angry later at other people and whatnot. So Mars Mangal is the lord of Virya, or energy. Then Saturn he brings that sense of time and pressure into our life. His superpower is stillness, solitude, and peace. So time and pressure they're kind of synonymous, right? Time is that great thing that's lording over us. We only have so much time, and that brings a certain amount of pressure into our life, right? Because we don't have forever. So not only do we not have forever to live, but we also don't have an infinite amount of power, which is related to the sun, or an infinite amount of love and devotion, which is connected to the moon, an infinite amount of intelligence, which is related to Mercury. So through the ego, and once we incarnate in this world, and in many ways Saturn is the one that shows our awareness of how fragile life is, and that we don't have forever and all these limits, then we have to contend with that, with how, sort of heavy and devastating that is to us. So that gives us the capacity to be still, to go into solitude, and to eventually find peace and make peace with it all. That's the real nature of Saturn underneath it all, rather than just collapse into fear. So he shows that pressure of time, and through that pressure of time, we have to make a commitment to this thing, not the other thing. Again, it forces us to make hard choices. Again, it doesn't mean with these, quote, difficult energies, they're really not difficult. They're very clear if we understand them. And again, that pressure of time means we only have so much time to focus our energy, so we can't just do it on anything. So that pressure of time is what allows us to enact greatness in our life and have greatness unfold, which again, that actually reveals the truth of how important something is to us, if we're willing to make a commitment to it. And when we are willing to make a commitment to it, it shows the truth of how important that thing is. Think of things like relationships or other things. It's not, if you don't care as much about it, you're not going to be willing to go through that difficulty and have that deep commitment to making it work in your life. You'll just let it go. And that's what disconnection is about. Saturn is about the connection, but also the disconnection, which means when it's time to disconnect from something or from someone. Again, think of something like a marriage, okay? That's a big commitment. Saturn is at the heart of that big commitment. And at some point, maybe it's not working anymore, or maybe it's not a marriage, but just any type of relationship or work. At some point, we either are in it too long or we're not in it long enough. Again, Saturn shows that healthy sense of staying in it long enough and then realizing, okay, now it's wasting time and I'm not growing. And I would rather be alone than waste more time in this thing where I'm just beating my head against the wall. So again, that ultimately shows things like limitations, boundaries, similar to Saturn, but Saturn defends the similar to Mars. Mars defends the boundary aggressively. Saturn has just this kind of long-term boundary where we want to stay safe in general, more about safety, right? Not about, encroaching on our values in the moment. So that limitations are very important to Saturn. And ultimately, all of that heaviness shows some very deep sensitivity that we are aware of with Saturn energy. It shows that deepest sensitivity to ourselves and to others. And again, so ultimately, because we know life is fragile and we've all lived through fragile moments, we have respect for others and in their fragile moments. So ultimately, Saturn, or Shani, is the lord of peace. Then we have Rahu, who is really very much related to future anxiety. And the superpower of Rahu is in accelerating our karma. So we incarnate with that nodal axis. Ketu, the south node, is the past lives that we had where we come in with a certain amount of expertise. And then Rahu is that future that where we're trying to conquer new territory, and the soul is trying to accelerate our perception very quickly. So again, his superpower is accelerating karma because we become strongly attached to a certain aspect of life. So in that sense, Rahu is where we can make a lot of mistakes, kind of like an immature child just trying a lot of things. So again, it's very important to look at the nodes in that kind of neutral context. Because again, just like you don't say a child is malefic or bad because they make a lot of mistakes, they can be disruptive. But seeing it that way is much more creative than seeing it as, toxic and all these other kinds of things. It's really just an immature energy where we're trying to develop something very quickly because we haven't had a lot of experience with it. So as such, what happens is we develop a lot of ingenuity with that thing as we're trying to develop it. As it develops, we're thinking outside the box. So we don't have a lot of preconceptions about it. So we might be thinking again in a very unique way. And this Rahu energy sees that hidden potential, that hidden possibility that maybe someone else didn't notice, because again, Rahu is very much trying to accelerate and sort of eat very quickly, get a lot of input, a lot of information, and try to figure something out, and very sort of hypnotized by gathering a lot of experience in a certain area. So again, we sort of try anything wherever Rahu is, and that can make us quite ingenious in a lot of ways because we're very curious, kind of like a child. They come up with some crazy stuff because they don't have a lot of the certainties that the rest of us have. Like, we're certain that something is possible, but a child isn't. So they're like, well, what about this? And sometimes they come up with amazing insights because they're not constrained by what is sort of normal. And so this is very much the nature of Rahu, but it's an anxiety behind it because we're trying to, again, where we have inexperience and we're sort of hypnotically attached to a certain aspect of life. And again, it shows confusion about the future, like a future confusion. Like, what does this thing mean? What is it going to be? Where am I going with this thing? And like, I have to try to develop this thing. And it's very much about the future, like, because we're trying to get somewhere with Rahu because we haven't gone there yet. So Rahu always feels a bit unprepared for the situations that are happening, even when it's creating positive results. Because many times he does. He creates a lot of positive results in certain situations. But even as he's doing it, we feel unprepared while it's happening. It's like, yes, all this great stuff is happening, but I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants. I'm not really sure where it's going or how it happened or how to even, do it again. But I'm just kind of going, sort of going with it. So that's the nature of Rahu. It's like on the cutting edge of new experience of the soul. So again, wherever these things are in your chart, like I've talked about, wherever those things go in your chart, that will be that Mars and that, and the capacity to be disciplined and do the things are right, not just argue about them or fight about them. That Saturn, which is to make peace with the limitations in life and make a commitment to those things that are really important. And that, that Rahu, which is that sort of anxiety about the future. Those are things I'm talking about in this overcoming difficulty reading, also including obviously Ketu, which I'll do in a second. But again, all those things I've just talked about, you can really learn about, because in your chart, these things are all disposed a bit differently. You have your own relationship with being disciplined, and instead of being disciplined about the things that are right, you kind of slide on your principles, and sometimes you do it, sometimes you don't. You're frustrated, and this person is taking me away from it, or that's taking me away from it. I'm distracted. With Mars, with Saturn, we tend to avoid, things that are hard. We tend to avoid, like, meditation and silence and things that are difficult, right? Instead, we just kind of want to avoid the Saturn stuff. It doesn't feel good. We sort of avoid that heavy stuff. But when we do face it, it shows up in a very powerful way, and Saturn will influence different areas of life. And then Rahu, again, is going to be pulling you in a certain direction. And then now they have Ketu, the other side of the node, which is the past anxiety. Past anxiety is where your soul has been, where you've incarnated in this lifetime with certain ideas about how things, certain things that you've done in your recent past lives, where you have developed very strong perception about a certain aspect of life, where you really see, this thing is very important. And we do have a lot of sort of past life experience with this thing, but it's also a kind of blind certainty where we think we've already been there and done that. We know all about that thing. Whereas Rahu is blinded about the sort of unexpected possibilities. Anything might happen, which is the Rahu end, because we're inexperienced. With Ketu, it's like, I already know what's going to happen there. I already understand. I've been there and done that. I know all about that thing. Again, both of them, Rahu and Ketu, are blinding in many ways. They're an extreme where we're blind to Ketu. We're sort of blind by the past because we have a lot of experience there, and Ketu and Rahu, we're sort of blind to the future because we haven't gone there yet. So with Ketu, there's anxiety about the past, but the superpower is also perceiving what is beyond, because Ketu is really, more than anything else, the great liberator. He's trying to be free of this world. So we come in with a certain amount of experience about one quality of the world, but we then, again, we tend to hide it or avoid it because we think we already know that thing already. We think we're already an expert. I got that thing all figured out. You can't tell me anything about that. I ain't got it. I know it all in a certain area of life. And we do have a lot of instinctive awareness because we spent a lot of time in our recent past lives focusing on that thing. And so in this lifetime, we don't have to focus on it as much, and we focus on the opposite end, which is the Rahu end. But the Ketu end isn't perfect yet, but it's trying to perfect that thing. So this is how Ketu is quite complicated, because we do have a lot of expertise there, but it's not perfect. And there's a lot of hidden mastery in that area of life if we're willing to go into it, because a lot of the facets of it are also painful recollections or painful experiences from our past, like from our childhood, and things where we didn't really enjoy how we became a master at that thing. We became a master at it in this lifetime because it was kind of forced on us, and we understood that area of life, and then we kind of bury it. So hidden mastery, this past life wisdom, Ketu is the ultimate liberator, because again, he's really trying to be free of everything. Wherever he influences and touches, he's like, this thing is never going to be perfect in the world. It's like this divine discontent is the easiest way to understand Ketu, where we know that no matter how much, sex, drugs, and rock and roll you get, it ain't going to be enough. That this world is going to be a disappointment on some level, and we're here to try to perceive beyond this world. His symbol is the body without the head. So it actually means that when you take the head off, which is all the senses and the thinking and all of that in this world, which is actually related to Rahu, where we're very enamored with all the senses and all our ideas, Ketu is everything else, everything that preceded this lifetime, all that wisdom in the body and the heart. But again, there's confusion about how to bring that out. There's confusion about what are the great lessons that we learned in our childhood. Those things that felt like they were just painful and forced on us, we don't want to go back and revisit it. But that's where all of our wisdom is. The wisdom of Ketu is in all of that stuff, untangling that. So, but again, underneath it all, there's just a lot of perfectionism. And Ketu is the co-lord of this shadow energy, along with Rahu. Rahu is Chaya, who's a shadow, who is the co-lord of the shadow energy, the ascending node. And Ketu is the co-lord, the descending node, where we've already been there and done that. So again, these four are the difficult energies in the overcoming difficulty reading. I'll talk about them in your chart, but then again, I'll also focus on where it says here the difficult houses, rulers. Every chart has difficult planets, houses, rulers sort of jumbled up somewhere. I don't really know till I see the chart. So I'll have these four things, but then you might have 2 or 3 planets in difficult houses or the rulers or whatever. Every ascendant has what are called functional malefics, where even like, for example, Jupiter for, a Taurus or Libra is actually quite a difficult energy, or, whatnot. So I'll also assess not only those 4 planets, but also the difficult houses and rulers, and then just look at the current stuff that you're going through if you want to do that. But aside from that, I hope this was helpful in understanding these difficult energies and trying to overcome the difficulty. And I hope at the very least I also brought some measure of understanding into these things. They're not just difficult. They're within that. The reason they're difficult is because they're challenging, and we're lazy, to put it bluntly. Humans are inherently pretty lazy. We just want to be happy. We want to feel good. We want to be inspired. We don't want to be challenged. We don't want to have to face ourselves. We don't want to have to work hard. We don't want to be, isolated. Everything that feels good to us is people and happy, and people like me, and it's fun, and I'm going to live forever, and we're very childish for the most part. And the reason these are difficult, which again ultimately they're not even really that difficult, is that they're challenging. And the best thing about astrology is it can bring things into the light so we understand them. We all have these capacities. At one time or another, all of us have used Mars energy like the greatest badass the world has ever seen. It's just a matter of whether or not it's worth it to us. Same way with Saturn, Rahu, Ketu. So all of that power is within us, but understanding those things in greater depth and understanding your challenges with it, I think, can be very helpful. And so if that's the case, then think about getting this reading where I'll take 30 minutes. I can get a lot out in 30 minutes and really unravel that for you. So thanks a lot.